Hey folks, welcome back for more things InZOI, and in today's video, let's cover Kjun's letters. I feel like that's a good place to start when catching up with news from April 25th and onward. That's right, another late to the party video coming at you randomly because that's how we do things here. God, I'm sorry, I'm always late. I'm always late. That is my life story. Thank you for staying subscribed. By the way, I don't deserve you. Okay, on May 9th, Kjun released a post overview of challenges and future ideas from what was at the time a pretty positive reception. That's kind of not where things are right now, according to Steam reviews, but at this time, Kjun and his team were keen on focusing on stability and patching. He says, "Our team has spent the past month carefully reviewing and addressing frequently reported issues, including build stability, awkward emotional expressions, and the lack of depth in the karma system." Where I'd like to take a pause a bit and sort of reflect on that statement is, while I appreciate the continued efforts to better refine stability and the small details like emotions and to have conversations flow more naturally, I do appreciate that, but I suppose where I'd hope to see in the future are more sweeping changes that add and better refine their vision. Now, I realize this is old news, one thing, and early access, a second thing, but I suppose developmental pace and expectations, sorry, I almost spilled my coffee, whoa. But yeah, what I mean by developmental pace is like, I suppose it has me contemplating the future progress of the game, but perhaps that has more to do with the release state of the game and how it compares with expectations, but I digress. He would go on to mention modding in future updates, which we'll talk about later in the video as it does appear in later letters, but I did want to cover his acknowledgement of gameplay depth or lack thereof. In this part, he builds up hype for the upcoming new city, Cahaya, and proposed gameplay that he hopes to release with it. He says, "We recognize the community's desire for more gameplay depth, and we will work towards offering content with the potential for richer storytelling and more engaging experiences. To match the vibe of the new city, we'll be introducing smaller vehicles such as motorcycles along with highly requested vehicle personalization features, and since these will build upon existing vehicle systems, some of the animations may seem slightly awkward at first. However, we believe that this will allow players to experience the thrill of weaving through the city on a smaller vehicle, enhancing both the storytelling and atmosphere aspects." Yeah, sounds good. Love it. More content. Love to see it. Now, I have been pretty forgiving about their car physics and the way vehicles currently operate around the city. I'm well aware the inclusion of which is still in the early phase of development. I'm actually pretty happy they included it despite it being in the early build, or this early in the build, I should say. I feel like these add-ons, despite not working completely as intended, is fine for early access. I'm glad to see they're adding more functionality even at this stage. I personally would have preferred more focus on Zois and the simulation aspect, but perhaps vehicles are an easier task right now. In some ways, the next part does explore more of what I'm talking about, and that's the karma system. Kjun mentions in this letter that they plan to add more gravity and consequences to actions. He writes, "To address the lack of meaningful consequences, we're currently planning new crime-related content that allows Zois to be caught and go to jail, spawning additional events as a result. Our goal is to create deeper gameplay experiences where karma-based interactions lead to logical connected outcomes." And I'm eager to see how far they take this in development. I wonder how meaningful will this end up being. He would finish up the letter acknowledging AI worries, like, are we dealing with naked Arnold Schwarzenegger or lovable data? He writes, "Finally, we've noticed growing interest and discussion within our community surrounding InZOI's use of AI. We will be addressing this topic in a separate announcement and will continue to prioritize transparency and trust to allow players to continue enjoying InZOI." Now, on this topic, he makes a follow-up post about how they go acquiring their data for their machine learning library, which again is more machine learning than actual AI, but colloquialism dictates otherwise. I get it. The post is on screen now, and while it is a general overview of how they sourced, you'd find more detailed information by checking Krafton's website. For me, I'm curious about how smart Zois work. That's primarily what we know to have impactful gameplay using AI, something akin to the game Suck Up, where inserting your own text can have the NPCs respond to you accordingly. Obviously, using machine learning and game AI is nothing new, but as you know, the conversation has exploded into something much more volatile in everyday conversations. But what really interests me, again, is smart Zois and how it affects gameplay. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it, I have an AMD card, a 7900 XTX to be exact, and InZOI doesn't like me for it. Yet, of course, if you know anything about PCs, you know how AMD can sometimes lack in the driver department, or even dev teams forget to, sometimes optimize for Team Red. Funnily enough, these last couple of days, I've been really trying to play, long InZOI sessions, but have experienced nothing but crashing. It must have been due to a recent patch, because before then I could play just fine. Relatively speaking, there would be some crashing, but thankfully this morning, to my surprise, they actually did release a hotfix specific to AMD cards, so that's a relief. On a side note, how do you know it's on your end or their end in terms of what's causing crashing? From my experience, it's always been if you meet the minimum or recommended requirements, if you've updated all your drivers, and you've been able to play games with adjacent graphics or near to, just fine, it's probably them. But I can't find myself switching over to Team Green, if you know, you know. But even then, it's like, is Team Red any better, consumer-wise? Questions like these are better left to folks like Aristotle. Okay, I'm derailing. On May 22nd, Kjun's letter, update, schedule change, and mod kit notice takes us through more detailed information about their plans for modding. These changes are actually in effect now, but I did want to take us through some of the details here, as I think it speaks to how they'll be navigating modding from here on out. He writes, the mod kit is a tool designed to help you create mods. Its purpose is to make it easier to create mod content and allows for more flexible sharing. And while InZOI includes a built-in CurseForge integration, we've broadened support so that creators can share mods in two ways. You can upload your mod to CurseForge and install it through the in-game mod browser, or two, you can save the mod locally and move it to documents /InZOI/mod folders and use it manually. Now, we have covered this on the channel through countless dev blog interviews and interviews from Kjun about how he views mods and how he views the modding community and the transformative effect it has on the Sims 4 community and the Sims more broadly, and how that really has governed his vision when thinking about how he wants to, how he sees InZOI in the future. So all of this is interwoven. So it's really cool to see that really come together here. What I find interesting is the use of CurseForge as an in-game browser. Now, their partnership doesn't surprise me. It's been announced some time ago, and many games are partnered with CurseForge, like The Sims 4, but I didn't realize they'd have it accessible in-game. And I suppose I'm too used to the Steam Workshop and Nexus mods way of things, but many devs have gone this route now. Bethesda, Larian Studios, etc. They all have their own in-house mod-specific browsing platform, so I guess that's where we're moving, but I just thought it was really interesting to see implemented so seamlessly into the game. All that said, I think a key takeaway here is number 2, that you can locally mod and manually go around using CurseForge. As it stands right now, there doesn't seem to be a lot in the ways of mods in the CurseForge browser. Alright, let's move on to Kjun's letter on June 6. Some of these updates he pushes out here are quite significant, and the things he talks about seem to be real game changers, but let's just take a look at them. Updates to family and relationship systems. So here he says there'll be more ways to build families. Zois can now have children regardless of marital status. One new method of doing so is adoption, which was originally planned to have various prerequisites. However, to allow players to form families more freely, we chose to simplify the system by minimizing the required conditions. In addition, you'll be able to select Zois with your desired traits and have a child using their genetic information through medical procedures. And we hope this feature will give you freedom to create the families that you want, or families of your own. You will also have teenage romance, romantic relationships with everyone, which is a feature that is still in development at the time of early access release. Zois can now form romantic relationships with any other Zoe in the city. To enable this feature, you have to go to Create a Zoe on screen and click the Change Gender Identity button to adjust your Zoe's settings. Now, these are huge. We have teenage romance, romantic relationships with everyone, and more ways to build family, because I just want to really just talk about a little bit on the more ways to build families. It did feel rather restrictive to not be able to have children. Like you have to be married first in order to have children. For me, you gotta have children before you get married. What? Anyway, what I'm getting at is it just felt really restrictive. A part of me does feel, though, if people haven't brought this up and expressed their concerns about how restrictive this is in terms of gameplay, that they wouldn't have changed it. One thing I did want to also mention, this it sort of relates back to one of their FAQs. One of the mods that I saw in CurseForge was to allow you to use a swimsuit as your Zoi's shower instead of a towel. Now, this was kind of laughed at a little bit when it was brought up, that it didn't seem realistic that Zois would wear their bathing suits while showering versus just wearing a towel. I mean, that was the reaction. But I'm really glad to see someone go out of their way to actually implement that as a mod, because yeah, that just seems a lot more, I don't know, for me at least, a bathing suit makes more sense than a towel when showering, if pixel censorship is not an option. Either way, what I'm getting at is there is a lot of movement by the community that has thankfully made significant strides to sort of change the opinions of some of the dev team, because I think that's where a lot of this comes from. One thing I wanted to touch on as well is that they'll have new items and creative tools, over 20 new character studio assets added. New items for character customizations have been added, including a highly requested addition of hair-related assets. Over 100 new furniture items added. More than 100 unique furnitures will be added, including items for kitchens, bedrooms, and babies. Again, think it's great that they continue to add these over time. It really does feel like they're sticking to their promise of creating assets and items and not nickel and diming us for each release, especially the way the state of the game is now. Okay, let's move on to Kjun's latest letter on June 20th. Essentially, this letter builds hype for Cahaya, the new city. He writes, "On that note, we'd like to announce some changes. The third city, formerly announced as Kusinku, has now been changed to Cahaya, a resort-themed destination where players can enjoy some rest and relaxation away from the bustle of city life. The word Cahaya means light, and true to its name, the city offers a variety of vibrant, refreshing experiences across exotic islands that can't be found in previous cities, such as farming, relaxing, boating, and exploring uninhabited islands, and we're working hard to make this update truly worth the wait." Alright, so there's a lot to unpack here, but let's just go over them briefly for the sake of brevity. But it does seem like he's implying that there will be gameplay that incorporates farming, boating, and exploring uninhabited islands. Very curious what that would look like in InZOI, because all those gameplay features, as the way I think of it, is if you include that in Cahaya, some of it must have some carryover in other cities. Now, he does state that he wants Cahaya to be not just another city, but visibly different and operates differently. That includes farming and boating. But I do see how it could have carry-on effects to like the Santa Monica city. What do they call a Santa Monica one again? I have like the worst memory. That's why I write everything down. What are we calling the what are we calling it? Bliss Bay. It's called Bliss Bay. Sorry, I was typing it out. I literally typed in Santa Monica InZOI. No, it's Bliss Bay. Like, for example, Bliss Bay. It makes a lot of sense to have, boating activities in Bliss Bay. So hopefully we do see some carryover there, and it's not all just restricted in Cahaya. But the fact that that we might have farming and boating and exploring uninhabited islands, does that mean they're going to have like secret pockets of activities that we can take our Zois to? This was something I actually talked about. I think it was in my Let's Play series, a god-awful one. I watch it back and I'm like, I can't believe anyone watched this. I'm so sorry I posted it, but I do plan to wrap it up. Anyways, having activities in the world just sounds like a really good idea, because the way that you can control your Zois, using WASD and having an open world, it just feels a lot more natural to go from place to place manually, like directing your character instead of having to warp all the time. And so I think it'd be really cool to have activities spread across every other city. And I hope it's not, again, I hope it's just not restricted to Cahaya. I hope we do see some fun and interesting activities that carry over to the original 2 cities. It'll really be, again, this update will be interesting in the sense that we'll get a better idea of if there's any sort of cross gameplay mechanics that make its way from the entirety of the game, because the way, again, he talks about Cahaya seems to be quite restrictive. But okay, let's move on to the second paragraph here. There's one thing that we are unable to address in this update, and we've received a great deal of feedback from players asking for improvements to the job system. But because Cahaya was designed as a resort-themed city, features like jobs and schools didn't quite feel like the right fit. As such, we've made a decision to exclude them from the city entirely. Players instead can enjoy a self-sufficient lifestyle through activities such as farming or fishing. Improvements to the job system will be coming with the next city update. Here, okay. So I'm not sure if I like it. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I mean, okay, I guess if we can travel from place to place freely and treat some locations as just like a vacay spot, then all right, that's fine. Personally, I think it would have been cool to have a self-contained ecosystem per world and not just something based off of farming or fishing. Maybe that's just me, I guess I guess for me, if they had said the reason why they don't have or haven't implemented schools or jobs that are relatable to the area is that they simply didn't have time to include them with the launch date that they've set. If they had said that, I'd be a little more understanding. But if to say that it's not part of your vision for Cahaya kind of makes me disappointed. But honestly, I'll just adopt the wait and see policy. It's an early access, so it's always tough to judge these things because you're not working with the final product. So everything can change. Speaking of which, dude, there's like 2 games that have come out that I thought I would be long dead before they would ever make it out of early access. That's like Scum and what's the other one? 7 Days to Die. Those 2 games have been in early access for like forever. Like, I don't know, like I'm just super into like video game industry lore that it's just so funny to see games that, I mean, RimWorld, all right? RimWorld was, well, let's see, how long has RimWorld been in early access? November 4th, 2013, the first alpha public build was released for RimWorld, and then it fully released in 2018. Why do I bring that up? Because for a large part of my life, as I was playing RimWorld was one of the first early access games I've ever tried in my life. But to have waited that long for a game to finally reach full release was crazy. All of that is to say that it's hard for me to judge InZOI at this state, especially this early on, when you take into account like the way the average early access game like lasts and where InZOI is. This thing is still at its infancy, so I don't know. Maybe I'm too generous with my perspective, but that's where I'm coming from. Anyways, that will conclude this video. There is literally nothing else to say. Everything you need to know about InZOI up until this point has been covered. There's literally 0 things that I missed here. I am joking again. My whole life is a joke. For the sake of time, I'll be covering feature updates in another video. To see that one, please stay tuned for more. But mainly, I just want to thank you all so much for watching. I do appreciate that. And I appreciate you. And I hope to see you in the next one, whatever the next one may be. So until then, I will see you then. Bye for now.